And yes, we are going to change gears completely. We have put the Autumn Nations Cup and all the European rugby and the end of that season to bed. And we're going to move on now and take a look at things down south, because boy, the reason it's pushed back is it was all decided. There was no dramatic conclusion to the Tri-Nations. No sirree. The All Blacks said...
There was a hint that there might have been.
There was a massive hint that there might have been throughout this game, but the All Blacks came through in the end with a dominant performance that has ended the competition in one fell swoop. The backlash.
Yes,
we fear the backlash.
It was feared, and it did come to pass. 38-0, an absolute tonking for the Pumas.
And that was something, wasn't it?
Yeah, really, really decisive. Literally decisive. It pretty much claimed the Tri-Nations, as we've said. Want to make mention to great pre-match and preamble as well, and the All Blacks offering that little tribute and the show of respect to Diego Maradona was really good. Probably edged the emotional pitch, where we were critical of them in the first meeting of these two teams for not really arriving at the right level of commitment and passion. It was the Argentinians who were lacking for it this time, and it was between all of that, the All Blacks
we've seen the fallout from it as well, and we'll touch on that obviously in later on. But yeah, absolutely, it's one of those things where the All Blacks are tend to be extremely classy as a rugby nation, and are really excellent at paying tribute, and they're also not silly in that it was a gesture so profound and so good that it perhaps stole the emotional edge, as you say, away from the Pumas, who might have had that to build from, and I certainly think there was an element of truth from that. Not that was the intent.
A little look when it panned, just as Reid laid down the thing, it pans to the Argentinians. Kane, sorry, puts it down. Can't read. I'm in the past here, but it cut to the Argentinians, and it was actually Montoya, I think, who just did a little kind of nod of reverential respect for that gesture, and it was as lovely as it is, it was kind of like a concession already of
well, it's just
some
this
of that
thing
bite.
where the in the winning game they built it all off this idea of they must show respect, which to be honest was a little contrived to begin with, but it was probably something they had to believe themselves. But the All Blacks are pretty respectful at the very best of times. They're they have every excuse to be arrogant bollockses given their record in rugby, but they aren't. They just aren't.
No.
And absolutely, they certainly couldn't feed off this idea that the All Blacks aren't respectful.
No.
They are extremely respectful, but what they did on the pitch might have been a bit disrespectful.
That was disrespectful. They tore them apart, and it was as we've said all through the season, it was physical dominance.
Yeah, that's where they went back to. But boy, did they do it, man! It was just different. They didn't allow them a moment's rest, the Pumas.
No.
They managed the territory really well. They didn't allow the Pumas to make it about their defence. They still struggled offensively, as we'll talk about, and it was a long while getting it going, but they owned the physical contests and the physical battles so much better. I thought a Kirioani coming in at 6.
He may have grabbed that jersey for goodsy, because Frizzell was absent in the first one, and it was the difference was stark. He was making play after play
winning
after play.
contact on the ball, that's not been happening for the All Blacks against these Pumas. Not been happening for anyone against these Pumas.
Ardy Sevilla as well. After the first, he was absent in game 1 with the Pumas, and he was everywhere. It was the play, him at his barnstorming playmaking best. And even we were calling Dane Coles had his worst showing in an All Black shirt. Right back at it. Grabbed the opening try. Really good.
Best performance of the season.
Well, where was he? He was on the wing, dotting down the try. He's better deployed there. There was a bit more savvy. It was a more rounded All Black performance. But then the one that was the most surprising for me was the scrum. I had no notion that was what was going to happen to the scrum.
It was one of those things. The All Black pack are surprisingly heavy, and they scrummaged as an 8, and Joe Moody had his best shout in an All Black jersey, and the Pumas had this changed team where they'd taken Alamano out, they'd taken Cadela out, they'd taken Tata Chaparro out at loosehead, and it was not as hefty.
Struggled for it.
Yes, and the All Blacks made them pay, and that was game changing. That was the Pumas then had no real way into this game.
No, it revealed some of their shortcomings once they weren't showing that exceptional kind of physicality and raw passion that they had in the first thing. Once that was gone,
exactly. Just edging all of those forward battles, all of those little exchanges, and then on the other end of it, doing to the Pumas what the Pumas did to them when they had the ball. Like they got out of the line and they gave them nothing to work with, and they left them absolutely rudderless with ball.
And they eventually ended up kicking it loosely a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, and then at the very end, to seal it, Will Jordan took 2 intercepts off them.
Good defensive pressure against loose kind of pattern. Well, that's the All Black picture as well, because they were chasing the game. That's what they wanted, rather than the first one where the All Blacks were the ones chasing it and they couldn't get a thing off, and it's like, why are the All Blacks so stuttery and they can't really do anything? But when the All Blacks are at their best is when a team is chasing them. And we saw it for Ireland in the World Cup when what was it, 42-14, that absolute pumping we got, and it was like, because we went behind straight away, then suddenly we're not being the controlled front runners, we're having to throw the ball around, and the All Blacks are lethal at picking that off. And Will Jordan, by the way, what the hell is the reasoning behind him only seeing 20 minutes of test time in this hold window?
It was very non-All Blacks to not throw. Like, they obviously threw Caleb Clark in, which was great, but
they could have had him and Caleb Clark and Bodie.
It's like the curious case of Geordie Barrett, who has been in the team keeping now Will Jordan out of it and Damien McKenzie out of the shirt, and putting in like average performance after average performance. And you talk to Kiwi fans and they'll swear by him. They'll say, I know he's the best 15 in the country, mate. And it's like, but is he? Like, his pass, he has a long boot, but his running game isn't as good as those guys. His passing game isn't as good. His vision isn't as good. So I don't really know what they're seeing.
If you're picking for his aerial dominance because he's a big 6'5" Jokovic thing,
then you're not being the All Blacks at all.
But also, that cross kick was inexplicable. He should have converted that. It was
the one in the first
half to go 14-0 as opposed to 10-0 up. That should have been a Geordie Barrett try, but it wasn't, and it would have been a Will Jordan try.
Well, he came on and made that point. He probably confirmed, like he made clear when he came on that he should have been there the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was definitely true. I will say, like, from a general point of view, like, the All Blacks owned it physically, and that was very good, and they ended up winning, very, very commandingly, 38-0. But when the clock actually reached the 80-minute mark, the All Blacks had 68% of the possession in the game. They had dominated both of the set pieces and just about all the forward battles, and their offense had yielded 17 points. Whereas their defense had yielded 14. They had a 31-0 lead. Now, they did get that try
at the end, the very long sequence of play.
But I don't know, like, they needed a bonus point to put this championship to bed. And I don't know if they're going to get it if they don't get those intercept tries. So I mean, it was like, from that point of view, there's still a lot to work on in terms of, like, every time they need a result, they're going back to the bludgeon, and they did out bludgeon the Pumas, but they weren't that slick at the end of the day. Where what you really want to see from an All Black team is a bit more slickness, a bit more creativity, and a bit more spark.
Well, because if they need a result, they desperately need a result, so they go back to the bludgeon. If the result in question, or the fixture in question, is against England or against the Springboks, it just won't work.
No, that's the problem. What I will say though is, I still think, like, obviously they were slowed down in a lot of ways by what happened in the opening day with Rieko Ioane, where he knocked that ball on and he lost the trust of the coaching staff and probably the team, and I wouldn't have been right to persist with him after that. Like, he needed, there needed to be punishment for that. It was bad, and it's still curious that he does the one-handed thing, because it's like, no, you're putting yourself above the team, you're being silly, and there needs to be consequences for that, and he coughed up the try and the game in that. But when he came back on the pitch, and it was his first time really since then, we've seen him at 13 when he came on in that second half. Suddenly, it looks better. He's got better vision. He's got better hands. He's got more dynamism in the midfield. He's an actual threat in the middle. Whereas Goodhue and Leonard Brown are really neither one thing nor the other. They're not that creative. They don't have the wide passes in them, and they're not that threatening with ball in hand. Like, they'll don't get me wrong, they'll execute,
and they'll edge of contact in the tight.
And if there's space, like if there's a 3-on 4-on-3 or a 3-on-2, and they're one of the guys in it, they have no issues executing that. Their basic skills are still great, as all Black players have. But just that little bit extra, I think Rieko has it, and I think they need it in the midfield.
They do.
So I think with Rieko in there, Will Jordan off the bench, it looked a lot better, and that last try they scored with Tui Pilotu was a very excellent score, and well deserved for the big man. I was delighted to see him finish off the season with a try.
The last All Black play is a big Tui Pilotu in space, and the Pumas were an absolute faded force at that point, but it was still nice to see them convert after that long sequence that led up to it. just a couple. I suppose those are the main things. The only little blight, I suppose, on the performance really is the Lomax
yes,
shot
that he did after 80 minutes, but that was a red card.
Red card, despite Justin Marshall's grievances about it. Last week it was a red, now it's a yellow, and it's like, no, it's not a yellow. It should be a red.
Yeah, it's just blatantly wrong, and you give out about the inconsistencies. What's funny is that the Kiwi commentators are always so baffled by it, and it's not baffling at all. That was an easy red, by the letter of the law. It was an easy red. It was a strange one.
They're just unused.
The refs down there, they just don't want to give it. And he was like, "Well, he's quite low." It's like, that's not what mitigating factors are. He wasn't dipping. He was there the whole time. He was there when Lomax initiated the contact. He was there when he was on top of him, and he was there when he smacked him in the face with his arm. Like, there was no question about it being a red card. It was just a very strange decision. Didn't make a bit of difference in terms of the game. It was yellow at 80 minutes. But
it's just annoying that some refs are taking it upon themselves to do something completely different from what the recommendation is.
To be honest with you, from an All Black point of view, it's a little concerning how frequently they're putting those bizarre shots in.
And then acting incredulous when they get red carded.
They need to stop hitting people in the head with their arms.
It used to be something it was a criticism I levelled pretty exclusively at the Aussie commentators, who were pretty bad for it, to be fair, particularly when they were officiating the collisions in the air rule, and it was like up in the Northern Hemisphere or anywhere playing rugby, and it's like, oh, he's hit the man in the air there, and your man's come down on the shoulder, that's going to be yellow, possibly red, and then they're going like, oh, it's a good contest there.
He's always on the ball.
He's always on the ball, you know. And or they're not even talking about it. They're going like, he just drops the ball there, you know. And then suddenly they're baffled when it's like, oh, what, a yellow card? And it's like, yes, a yellow card.
Because the guy was in the air catching the ball, and another guy came flying in and took the legs off and sent him spinning.
You know? He did 3 flips and landed on his head. Yes, it's a red card. You know, like, some of the incredulous responses that you're getting to some of that is what's concerning me, because it's not a difficult call. It's a clear cut call.
But the law, if you read it, doesn't make it unclear either.
No, it doesn't.
They're pretty clear on the protocols for that stuff. Although some refs are getting very loose with what they define mitigating factors as, which was not the case last year. There was aggravating factors.
Mitigating factors. It's a good game.
You know, like basically. To look at just from a Pumas point of view, obviously this was a bruising one to take.
Literally and figuratively.
They didn't have the same emotional energy. The decision to take Tata Shaparo and Kodea out of the team
proved imprudent.
Well, gee, how badly did it backfire?
I've never seen Joe Moody look so dominant in a scrum.
I mean, it was great for him, but from a Pumas point of view, it was obviously their scrum was turned to mulch. It's
from strength to weakness in one fell swoop, and then from there, the main issue, as you were highlighting before, it's the offense.
They can't move the ball.
They've scored 1 try in 3 games now, and even that try was, like, as I was saying, it wasn't penetrative. They managed to chip it over the top and get a little bit of luck from the bouncing ball. Like, that's just really not enough return in terms of the offense.
It doesn't look like they're working on their ball skills. It looks like they've made it all about like the defense and the niggle and the set piece. And that's what they're trying to bring, just making it horrid.
And as such, they look a little clunkier when they're trying to pass the ball.
Exactly. Like Kramer had a bad drop, like once or twice in the second half off set piece. They put together a nice move, but then by second or third phase it broke down, and there was handling errors, there was unslick passing. It's not something that we associate with Argentine rugby, and while it's fine that they went back to basics in terms of getting there,
they had some problems to fix, definitely, but now they seem to have addressed
the victory over the All Blacks doesn't need to paper over the cracks, because, to be honest with you, it was a miraculous draw that they got from a ref's whistle and against a very wasteful Australia team. And then prior to that, they had that really rough World Cup where they weren't creating. They still need to look like the Pumas, you know. They don't need to, like, they're talking about going back to their roots of the 90s of being a scrummaging team, and they don't need to abandon the development that they made that got them to a World Cup semi-final in 2015, where they were just this brutally awesome offensive team. And they've got guys like Juan Imov, who we know are classy players and finishers, who they're not getting the ball to in any kind of space. They've got to link up, and they've got to emphasise skills and attack. They've been together in camp for however long. They've got to emphasise skills and attack. Their defence is great, and they still showed some great hustle to keep the score down in this game for large periods.
Well, considering the All Blacks had what was it, 70% possession, like it could have been 70. So, but for their good defence. But it's not. They're kind of a one-string banjo when they don't have their wide men getting on. It's been perplexing because, as you say, they do have talent. You have your Imovs and your Corderos.
And what I will say is, like, De La Fuente and Malia Australia coming in for Chocobarras and Orlando was much worse as well. Like with Chocobarras and Orlando, you got the sense that they could move the ball, and there was a bit of distribution in there.
For sure.
With these guys, it was just not there at all.
A bit more smashy, a bit more rudimentary, and then ultimately less slick. They did scramble well throughout, which is obviously encouraging for the team ethic and the work ethic, the work ethic of the team. When their line was fractured, they were trying to hustle back and trying to cover the space, which is obviously good, better than like your Italy criticism of like once one try goes in, 4 more come.
Yes, they
weren't like that, which is obviously good to see. But just developing that bit more, just not losing that ball in hand kind of flair that they had. And then you think with Czechia in there, some of that should start to build bleeding in. We aren't. It's not been a particularly good showing in the last few bits for Czechia's tenure with them.
As we'll touch on, all the positive energy that was around Argentina has now thoroughly dissipated after a couple of rough weeks. But that'll wrap up our coverage of this game. I just want one more congratulations to the All Blacks.
Yes.
In the face of stark criticism and with very real shortcomings that weren't there before, they showed up on the big day and did a real job. And secured the Tri-Nations with a commanding performance and a 38-0 victory on the most important game to seal up their second trophy of the season is championship clutch.
It is clutch, and it's stuff to restore the confidence in it and maybe put the pitchforks away, because the pitchforks were starting to come out.
They were. So come here, Fuzzy
Bear, come here. So maybe a bit less of that. They did manage to do it on, as you say, the biggest day on the biggest stage. They wrapped off their season with a tremendous high and
trophy sealing win
and some lovely tries. So congratulations to the All Blacks. Fantastic job done 2020. We'll see you next year.
Congratulations, All Blacks.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you're new here, please do like and subscribe and ring the bell as well, so you'll be notified when we upload. But mainly drop a comment down below as well. We love hearing your thoughts on the rugby. Cheers.